What we're going to talk about on the next slide here is the data required for asset reporting. So just think of it just in this year. In 2018, it's pretty much been the year of the audit. And I know a lot of you have heard some of the DOD rumblings about the DOD, failed an audit that they expected to fail. But audits are going to be here, and one of the biggest, components of these audits are the assets that the government has in their custody, as well as the assets that property managers and custodians on the commercial side who are administering government property. So, from a UID registration perspective, the APSR that the government uses is the WAF, or the IUID Registry. So that's where they can go in and look and see what they have, what's marked, and they're really looking to the contractors or the contract community to be able to report on what they have in their possession or what they're managing for the government. So once you go through all the steps that Dan just went through in terms of, making sure you've selected the right label, validated and verified, the label and the syntax, as well as, affixed it to the asset, the registration process is the last of an end-to-end process. So going to the IUID registry and doing that data submission, it really comes down to the item, when it was required. Is it a legacy item? Is it GFP? What's the value of that item? These are all data elements that the government's looking at as they're, going through these audits. And when they went through the audit, I believe they spent somewhere around $400 million on the audit, and anticipated to spend another $500 million in terms of fixing some of the problems. So right where we're on this slide is kind of where some of those problems can happen if the data is not correct. And I think the tack that the government's taking now is, hey, as we do more audits, we'll be able to improve the quality of data. As we improve the quality of the data, now we have the ability to make better decisions on supplies, asset deployment, and things of that nature. So the last point here I'll make is repairables in terms of, and I think Dan touched upon that a little bit, in terms of when something comes back that needs to be repaired, when the mark needs to be replaced. Those life cycle changes need to happen, and going into the IUID registry is definitely important to make sure that this whole ecosystem works within the DoD in terms of the government knowing what they have, who has it, and can it be deployed, and what the condition is. Dan, do you want to add anything?
Just that sometimes the reporting or the registration process tends to be forgotten because it's an intangible item. It's right. Something that is done, and we're going to get into this on our next slide, a number of different ways. You have a number of options in terms of the reporting, but the tendency out in the field seems to be, well, as long as I've got the label on the asset, I'm good. But you really need to report or tell the government what you have and what it is. That's how they're able to track all of their assets. And as these assets move, whether it be change of custody or end of life, those life cycle changes need to be updated in the registry. The registry is the system of record that the DoD uses to maintain all of these assets. So while there's no additional physical process in terms of marking or changing the marking process, the initial marking process is just the first half, if you will, of the game. The second half is reporting those assets that you've marked to the government. Very important.
Right, exactly. And we get the question all the time working with various customers. I always tell them, look into your contract. And if you have the DFARS clause 252, 211, 7007, that means you have a reporting requirement And a lot of the things we touched upon in terms of Mill Standard 130 requirements will kind of govern how you need to mark, as well as on the reporting side. Whether you're the prime or you have subcontractors underneath you, the responsibilities of the prime, but at the same time, you got to make sure that the assets that are under your custodianship get to the registry, because you can be audited by the DCMA.
Great point.
So let's talk about how you get assets into the IUID registry and the considerations around registration. Look, I mean, the system, the way it works today, if you've got a couple of manually doing data entry into IRAP might be an option, or going into the IUID registry and doing that. But if you've got hundreds and thousands of assets that you need to mark and account for, and again, you have that DFARS 252.211.7007 clause in your contract, then you're going to need a system of record that's going to be able to handle all the data elements. If you're doing label outsourcing in terms of just getting some things marked for a shipment, an acquisition shipment that you have, and you're working with the government, so outsourcing that asset registration is possible. But typically what we see, the route most people go is a third-party software using an automated solution that can move data into the IUID registry and IRAP. And I know IRAP is going to be renamed. We don't want to get into that right now, but we'll just call it government systems. So being able to do your acquisition reporting. What I would tell you, basically in a nutshell, using a spreadsheet is dangerous. It's very dangerous because spreadsheets don't have the ability to take all your data and have it in one repository and allow folks to work on different aspects of it. And we're going to talk about this in the next slide from a dynamic standpoint. It'll retain all the data, but in most cases where you have multiple people working on different areas in terms of finance, shipments, and things of that nature, the third-party route, a solution that has a database and can be used by multiple users at any time is always the preferable recommended method in terms of having a solution of record that can handle all your acquisition and custody, if you're on the property side, transactions. Dan, you want to attack this one real quick?
Yeah, so when you're dealing with the DCMA and auditors, if they see a spreadsheet, it makes those guys a little nervous because it is a manual process and it's risky, as Sharrieff had mentioned. So one of the recommended ways to do this is using a third-party software that meets those compliance requirements. And for example, just use A2B Tracking as the example. We have our software called UC-Web, which gives you the full capability to submit all of your registration requirements electronically to IRAP or the IUID Registry. Actually, UC-Web can be used for the entire compliance requirement. You can use UC-Web to create your UID labels. Once the labels have been created, they've also gone through that verification and validation process. The software will only allow you to create fully compliant labels. So once you have the UID created and it's gone through all of the compliance process, combine that with you're going to now submit everything electronically, it just makes everything go a lot more smoothly and much more timely. By meeting your compliance requirements timely, one, you're saving time and labor costs in getting this process done, and two, probably most importantly for all of you, you're going to get paid in a timely manner because your compliance is being met right away. Using UC-Web, it takes the guesswork out. Using UC-Web, it gives you the ability to track all of your data and manage and maintain all of that data electronically. So using a third-party software when dealing with the DCMA they're going to look upon that much more favorably than if you show them an Excel spreadsheet. Because again, there's the risk factor involved. And when you're dealing with compliance software, the auditor is going to realize that, okay, you have a system in place that is going to meet your compliance requirement. Now, UC Web also has some other capabilities. I'm going to let Sharrieff just expand upon that.
Yeah, and really what you're seeing here is an aggregation of all your data and being able to repurpose, reuse, and get all that data filtered up into your report. So doing your reporting, if you got data flowing from manufacturing, from warehouse and shipping, from finance, program management, property management, all that, whether you're processing DD 1149s or DD 50s, you've got the ability with UC Web to do all of your reporting into DoD systems. And again, having the verification report and things of that attached in a specific area, all in one repository with all your data aggregated. Again, the big thing with these audits is about getting clean data. And with UC Web, you have the ability to have all your data accurate, efficient, and ready for reporting. So we wanted to stress upon that because when you look at this whole process, it's an end-to-end process. It's creating the labels, it's going through all the processes of making sure you're using the right material, it's doing the verification and validation, and it's also doing the reporting. But it's also, if you need to have this data at your fingertips for any auditing or reporting instances, you have it within one system. That can allow you to do all of the essential workflows around IUID compliance, whether you're doing custody or you're doing acquisition.